Welcome to the USU Career Services podcast that helps you navigate your career path. Thanks for joining us for our Friday face-to-face episode. I'm Tatiana Felch, your host, and today I'm very excited to have Brent Meacham, the Vice President of Global Marketing and Communications for Strider Technologies, joining us today. Great to have you, Brent.
Well, thank you. It's so great to be here with you today, Tatiana.
Thanks. Appreciate it. So traditionally, I'm going to introduce you first, and then we'll go from there.
Perfect.
Okay. Brent Meacham is the Vice President of Global Marketing and Communications for Strider Technologies. Brent leads the marketing, advertising, events, branding, and public relations for Strider. Prior to Strider, Brent led a marketing team at American Express in New York City. In that role, he developed the marketing and communication strategies targeted to 3.2 million U.S. corporate card members, spending $75 billion with a B annually. Previously, Brent worked in buying and merchandising for Macy's, where he managed all the financial plans and forecasts to drive $205 million in revenue for men's Calvin Klein and Perry Ellis brands. Brent started his career working in marketing and student recruitment for John Huntsman's School of Business at Utah State University. And one fun fact, if I could share.
Please.
With our
I guess it depends.
You just started taking oil painting classes.
I did, yeah.
What made you choose this hobby?
Well, I just feel like, life is too short. I never took any kind of painting classes in high school, where I feel like a lot of people have that opportunity. And one of my best friend's sisters is a high school art teacher. So I reached out to her and just said, I'd love to get into oil painting. I think there's a creativity that comes, in a lot of the arts. And I think the more you can spend in that, in those artistic endeavors, I think helps to balance out your life. And so I was looking for something new as a hobby. I'm not very good. I thought I was going to be much better than I am, which
not very good yet.
Not yet. So working to get there. Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. And so a follow-up question. I love art history. And so you've lived in New York, right?
I did. Yes.
Have you ever visited MoMA?
Yes. Oh, I mean, the Met, the MoMA, and then I've been to Paris multiple times, the Louvre, the d'Orsay, and just so many other spectacular museums. I actually went out to Giverny, where Claude Monet painted his water lily paintings just last fall. So I love art. I love art history. And that was also, I think, part of the reason to get into this endeavor of trying to learn how to oil paint.
No, I think this is awesome. I can relate. I've been to those museums. But the Starry Night, I think, is in MoMA.
In the MoMA, yes. Yeah, right now. Painting. Yeah.
So who's your favorite artist?
I think Claude Monet right now. And everyone loves Claude Monet, but I feel like I just love his ability to capture the light, which I think, that's what defines a lot of Impressionism artwork. But I think just one of my favorites. So. That's
so cool. That's something we have in common. Right?
I love that.
I love art. Don't paint at all. Okay. So today we're going to talk. You suggested that wonderful topic, the winding road to your career. And I'd like to start with a quote from the New York Times newspaper article that you've recommended. So, make sure my glasses here. Okay. The quote is by Leonard Mladino. When we're in college, we think about our future as a direct line from now to then, from here to there. You might get an internship at a financial service firm, then become an assistant, and gradually move up until someday you're the boss. But if you look at the careers of many successful people, you'll find that their route is often far more sinuous. And if you look at happy people, you'll find even fewer who traveled a straight line.
Yeah, I love that.
Any thoughts?
Yeah, well, I think, it's so easy when you look at my bio or my background or my career or my resume, LinkedIn profile. I think this is true for most people to just see, there's this amazing line of, from this role to this role and promotions and this company to this company. But I think for me, what I found so true in life is just really how winding your career actually is and the twists and turns that it can take for better and sometimes, unfortunately, at times too, for worse. course of learning experiences that deviate you and but ultimately hopefully help to get you to this point of where you're trying to move your career forward. And I learned this, and this article came out I think in 2012, and my first boss like actually had it printed out and framed, and this was at Utah State, so we were dealing a lot with students and careers, and I'm a big Aggie fan, and so I loved though that ability and the way that he really helped to frame out. I think even though I was outside of, I had just graduated, this is my first job, I think I was thinking of that as well. We'd have all these impressive alumni come back to campus, and that was the theme I kept seeing over and over and over again, that often in life we try to have this like planned out process, but if sometimes we're too structured and rigid in what we're wanting to have our career path to be, then we can potentially miss opportunities. And that was one takeaway I kept hearing over and over again, an opportunity that came unexpectedly or something that took a career in a different path. And I love that sentiment. And so I think that was something early on I tried to be very cognizant of in my own career. And still, as I have had opportunities to meet back with students at Utah State and to chat with others, that it feels like that common thread that really does, like, we think of things so linearly, but if we start to actually piece together, we realize that there's ups and downs and that the path can be a bit winding, and that's okay.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. You just hit on like half of my questions.
Well, I've got a few stories to share along the way, so we can continue to chat through them. Yeah,
I'm excited. Okay, so you started at Utah State.
Yes.
And now you're leading global marketing and communications for Strider Technologies. Yeah. Did you ever imagine this would be your path when you were walking around campus as a student?
Absolutely. No. No, but I do feel like there were things when I was a student. I had ambitious career aspirations. I wanted to work for a Fortune 100 company. I wanted to work for a global brand like American Express and Macy's that were recognizable names. I always had a dream to live in New York City. I think now, looking back where I'm at now, and I'm just in the midpoint of my career, so I've got many more years of exciting things ahead. But I think for me, when I look at some of those things that were goals and aspirations as a student, I've been able to hit some of those, which has been pretty incredible. But there's been so many other things that like were so unexpected along the way too. I think one specifically where I'm at now at Strider was working with former classmates. So the two of the co-founders of Strider are fellow Utah State students. Greg Levesque, our CEO, and I we were in the Huntsman Scholar Program, which is the business honors program together, and did a study abroad experience together. And his twin brother, Eric, who's one of our other co-founders and our chief operating officer, and I had a bunch of economics courses together at Utah State. And we've kept in touch all of these years. It was a bit serendipitous that they started this company. They were looking for someone to head up marketing and build out the marketing program at Strider. And it fit in with the background and expertise I had in the B2B marketing space at American Express. And it just was serendipitous, but like such an exciting opportunity. And so I think one thing that I don't think I appreciated when I was back in college, sitting next to all these other students, was, hey, I could be working with these people or working for these people one day. And what an exciting experience that has been. Just a couple of weeks ago, we hosted a big event actually in Tokyo in Japan. We have a huge emerging market there of clients for us as a business, which is very exciting. My first time to Japan was last July, which was incredible. An amazing culture, amazing people. And we hosted this event. We had about 100 plus people that came. We even had a member of parliament that came to our thought leadership conference. And after the event, our CEO, Greg, and I just had this moment where also because of this event, like I've done events all over the world, but this one's in particular, we had sessions in Japanese, we had sessions in English, we had, headsets for everyone and translation actively going on throughout the conference, which was incredible. We just had this moment though, Greg and I at the end of the conference, just like, wow, we have come a long way from Utah State. We're on this 51st floor of this beautiful building overlooking all of Tokyo. And again, I just don't, that's something even my wildest dreams probably couldn't have placed me into that scenario and that experience. And I think that's where there's so many exciting things that really await all of us within our careers of opportunities that as a college student, I don't think I could have even fathomed, even though I had some grand ideas for what I wanted my life and career to be. Okay,
awesome. Love that. So you've been in marketing for quite a long time, right?
Yeah.
But you've also worked in different industries.
Yeah.
From education, like in Utah State, right? Then finance and retail.
Yep.
And now it's tech, right? So maybe talk a little bit about some soft, maybe transferable skills that were most useful for you to adapt from industry to industry.
Yeah, I mean, that's such a great question. I think a lot of times you can get pigeonholed into an industry, but I do think, to your point, there are skill sets and things that really just transcend industries. I think for me, the biggest one I've learned throughout my career is the ability to try to add value wherever I'm at. And I learned this, thankfully, very early on in my career, actually at Utah State. The job I had was a brand new role and position doing marketing and student recruitment. The admissions office does an incredible job doing student recruitment for all of Utah State. And I had been a student ambassador for many years, so I was very familiar and had gone back to a lot of high schools. But at the time, the business school specifically said, not only do we want them to come to Utah State, we want to also have them come to the Huntsman School of Business. And we want to try to get the best and brightest that are out there. And I think a lot of times in our jobs, we can get very caught up in just working and a lot of busy work that doesn't really move the needle. And truthfully, that's where I landed the first couple of months. I'm right out of college, thankfully had a great boss and mentor, Dave Patel at the time, who we worked very closely on how do we develop out this program. And the idea was that we wanted to create a pipeline and relationship with high school teachers across the Wasatch Front, and then a couple key markets international or across the country as well. And how do we develop those relationships so that it's not just something done once, but something that can really help to develop a wonderful pipeline of great students coming not only to Utah State, but into the business program. And that really helped me to understand the value or the importance of that creation of value, and that it isn't just about doing work and busy work. That's not very rewarding either, but that as you approach any industry or any job opportunity, how can you add value and really expand what's actually happening to drive the business or the organization forward? And we saw that. So I think over my 4 years, we had a 200+% increase in student enrollment at the Huntsman School. They still have 2 full-time recruiters now working back and developing the same pipeline that years ago we developed. And that's really cool to see that lasting impact. Yeah. And that's where I think, to your point, what transcends different industries, different jobs, different companies, different organizations, I think that ability to add value is so critical.
I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay. So many of our students feel pressure to have their entire career mapped out, like before graduation. Looking back, how much of your career journey was planned versus unplanned opportunities that you mentioned before that you chose to explore?
That is, I think I admire people that are so goal oriented and driven. I am not one of those people. I have friends at the beginning of the year, they sit down and here's going to be all my New Year's resolutions. But that's not to say that I don't plan out and have ideas of where I want my career to go. So I think as a marketer, I love the ability to tell stories. And I've been saying this phrase more recently, and I think it's so true that we are the stories we tell ourselves. And I think for me in my life, what I've really tried to do is to narrate the life I want to live and tell myself the stories of the direction I want my career to go. And I think that has benefited me. It hasn't worked out perfect every time, but I think that phrase, we are the stories we tell ourselves, for good and for bad, what we tell ourselves gets so internalized. And so I think for me, I've really tried to paint that picture back to the art, of what I want my life to be. And I think that's been just so important of seeing that. And again, it hasn't been every twist or turn worked out perfectly. But I think that has helped me to really try to navigate. And then when those opportunities come up, I'm able to pivot because I'm not so rigidly focused on, hey, I need to be here and here and here, but can look at what does this potential opportunity bring into my life. And you see that. I mean, you look at, out in industry, Walt Disney, Steve Jobs. I mean, the list goes on of people who were exceptional storytellers. And I think the same sentiment is true, that they really helped to create what was it they were trying to build and to accomplish. Not to say that they may or may not have had goals that they were setting out as well. But I think for me, that's been something that's been really beneficial in how I've tried to navigate my own career.
Oh, I love that. Okay, awesome. Okay, so we're going to get a little bit more personal, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
So I'm curious about the moments of doubt in your journey, in your career path. Was there ever a time when you thought that you've taken a wrong turn?
I mean, many times. The biggest one that I think when you look at really my career, my resume, my background, you go kind of marketing, that blip at Macy's and financial planning and forecast and marketing and student recruitment. So I would say when I first moved to New York City, I had gotten accepted. Macy's has an amazing executive development program where you get accepted, and for 8 weeks, you're with 30 other people going through really a deep dive of the buying and merchandising world in each of the different job functions, and have guest speakers come from across the company. They do an exceptional job. And at the end of that, they really just place you into one of the job functions under the buying and merchandising umbrella. And the one that no one wanted was financial plans and forecasts. It was just a lot more technical, it was in the numbers. I shouldn't say no one, not as many people were excited about that. But I think when you looked at our cohort, I had a business and economics background and degree, and a lot of the other colleagues maybe went to fashion school or had more of the creative, fashionable type of backgrounds. And so I think that's how I ended up, I think, truthfully, in the financial plans and forecasts. And it was a cool opportunity in that, like, we were working, the first half of my tenure at Macy's, I was working with Nike and Adidas and Champion and the sportswear brands. 2017, Adidas was having a moment, as they like to say, still having a moment, actually. But I think when I there were some cool things that were going on, but I still remember calling one of my friends who was living back here in Utah and just like, I don't know what I did. Like, I'm such a creative person. I love marketing, and this is like as far from it as possible. I'm in Excel for 10 hours a day. I don't understand this all the time. And so it was really a stretch experience for me to really have to try to get up to speed to be able to do the job. And thankfully I had some great, leaders that were helping me and training me. But after being at Macy's for a year and a half, realized I really wanted to get back into marketing. And thankfully, the opportunity to move over to American Express opened up, and I could move back into that marketing world. But what I will say now, looking back, even though that was one of the most difficult parts of my career, and like, it sounds a bit melodramatic to say like I hated my job. Like there were parts that were good, and there were things that were exciting and projects that we worked on that were interesting. But what I gained in financial literacy was absolutely incredible. As I have continued to grow my career and to move more into leadership capacities, that's what I'm doing. I'm looking at the profit and loss, the P&L statements of our company. I'm looking at my budget. I'm balancing those things. I'm working with our finance team very closely. And I think a lot of people have to go back and get MBAs or get additional training in finance to gain a lot of the insight that I gained while I was at Macy's working on these financial plans and forecasts. I mean, there was one time where we were doing really poorly. This was like retail 2017 big box stores were not doing great outside of the Nike and the Adidas sportswear brands. But I had to call the financial planner at Calvin Klein. My boss had left and her boss had left. And so I was direct reporting into our VP of finance at the time. And we had to make some cuts because Calvin Klein, this month of May had not sold what we thought they would sell. And so I had to pick up the phone and call the financial planner at Calvin Klein and say, hey, there's $3 million worth of product across the country that we can't bring in next month. And they were like, what? Again, I don't know if I was the most appropriate person to be making that call, but I did. And we ended up figuring out and working with them to figure out, okay, how could we resolve this? And how could we figure out, okay, we'll take some cuts here and we'll maybe push them out to July instead of June, and worked with them to figure out a solution. And that's where, again, I learned so much valuable information. And I think that benefited and has benefited my career so tremendously moving forward. But at the time, it was definitely one of those hard moments where I was questioning a lot of why did I make this decision, even though it got me out to New York City? Why am I here and what am I doing? And so I think it's very normal to find yourself in those scenarios. And I think when you find yourself in those scenarios, to pause and to recognize maybe there is something that you can learn and that you can benefit through those experiences.
I love that. Somebody once told me, instead of thinking like win some, lose some, win some, learn some.
Oh, I love that.
I think that's exactly what happened.
Well, and that's so true. I think of our careers, like the failures that we run into, like if you're not learning from it, then it was a waste. Yeah. And so again, nothing in life goes perfectly. You know, my career's had ups and downs, moments where it's felt headed in a better trajectory than other times. But I think that point is so critical and key of like, what are you learning along the way?
Yeah. A little bit more positive.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, it goes back to what's the story you're telling yourself, you know?
That's true. That's true. What the picture you're painting.
Yes, exactly. Absolutely.
That's true.
As bad as it may
be. Well, art is subjective, right?
Yes, exactly. Thankfully. Yeah.
Exactly. So at some point, everyone faces a moment where they have to take a leap into something new. It could be a new job. It could be a new industry. It could be starting your own business or going back to school. Yeah. Right? What advice would you give for making those kinds of decisions?
The best advice I ever got on this was failure is the price of a plane ticket home. And when I was interviewing for Macy's and I'd gone out to New York City, I went a couple of days early ahead of the interview, and a friend of a friend had connected me, or I should say there was a friend of a friend that was living in New York City who I met up with for brunch. His name's Zach Ames. He was actually working at Bloomingdale's in their talent recruitment program, which Bloomingdale's is part of Macy's. It's the high-end department store under the Macy's umbrella. And he was so gracious to meet me for brunch and essentially give me advice and guidance. So we went to brunch and then we spent a couple hours together. He even walked me around the iconic Herald Square Macy's store, pointing out the things that as I went through the interview process that I should be looking at and observing from a buying and merchandising standpoint. How was the floor laid out? What things are where? What are the price points? Is there any patterns that I could recognize? And that was just, I mean, first of all, it was invaluable for the actual interview. And I think I went in with just all the confidence in the world because of the time he spent with me. So I'm still so grateful for that. But he said something that has always stayed with me, and it was that sentiment. Even if you move out to New York, even if you crash and burn and it all goes awry, the worst case scenario is you book a plane ticket back to Utah. $250, $300 max. Like, that's a pretty low bar of failure if you actually put it in that context. And that's why it's always stayed with me, is because it just helped me to actually, I think there's so many times in life that we're afraid to do things because of the fear of failure. And often if we actually were to think about it in realistic terms, the barrier is actually not that high. That worst case scenario, I crashed and burned in New York. I just moved home back to Utah where I already am. And I think putting in that context was just incredible. And so I've tried to share that with as many people as possible throughout my career as well, because I think that fear of failure sometimes can get overwhelming and it can really hold us back from doing things that are incredible. It's funny, about 9 months before I really decided I wanted to move to New York, I had a friend convince me to go skydiving in Hawaii. And it was an incredible experience. I don't think I'll ever go again, but I think living through that, which again, a lot of people go skydiving and live through it. So it's not that's like a rare exception. But it did, again, it made me look at life in a different way of like, if I can get through that, I can do anything. And it sounds so silly that something so trivial in my personal life really made me alter my mindset. But I think those experiences, that's the point of some of those, is to essentially make us realize like the fear of failure and what we're doing, it can hold us back so dramatically if we let it. And just realizing that the opportunity is theirs for us if we're not afraid to take it.
No, yeah, I absolutely agree. I think it's very liberating when you start not fearing to fail.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
It doesn't mean that I'm perfect in that every time. So like, again, there's moments in life where you kind of go, oh my gosh, can I do this? And like, am I capable of doing this? Do I have the grit or the ability or the connections or whatever it might be to actually accomplish this? But I think, again, as long as we're not rooted in that fear of missing out or failing, then I think we can really see incredible things happen.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And that's kind of my biggest fear in life, is like, okay, what are the things that I'm going to regret at the end of my life? I'm like thinking probably things that I didn't do.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know? So yeah, I totally agree with you. Love that advice. Okay. So for students and early career professionals who want to build a flexible and successful career, What key habits or strategies would you recommend?
Oh, that's a very good question. I think to build a flexible and successful career, you need to become a flexible and successful person is the idea. And so one that comes to mind that I still remember actually that happened at Utah State. So when I was a student, there was a guest speaker that had come to campus, and this was in the evening time. His name was Kimo Esplin, and he was the CFO of Huntsman Chemical for many, many years. And he shared some advice it was very finance heavy, which maybe I should have paid more attention then. But it was more finance heavy, obviously, given his background. But he gave some great career advice at the end. And one of the things he said was that every morning he reads the New York Times and he reads the Wall Street Journal. And those two publications have very different views on the world. They have different political leanings. But that by taking a balanced approach, he was able to see sometimes even the same story or the same news article, but within two different perspectives. And I think that has been so valuable for me. And that's something actually I still to this day do. I have subscriptions to the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal, and I try to read both of those every single day. I think also being from Utah, which leans a bit more red and Republican, and then living in New York City, which leans about as blue as you can get. Again, this is not political advice, but rather just that idea that so much of your career and problem solving is looking at things from different angles. And so I think when you can do that and see value in differing perspectives, even if it's a perspective you don't agree with or believe in, the benefit that can have in helping you to be that flexible person. And so again, how do you become flexible and successful in your career? I think it's developing flexibility in your life and being able to see things from differing perspectives. Oftentimes when we're trying to solve a problem, it's the unconventional things that we might not have thought about that have sometimes the biggest impact in revamping how you approach something. And I've seen that time and time again in my career. And so I appreciate the advice that he gave and try to still follow it to this day.
I like it. That's awesome. Well, folks, unfortunately, our time is coming to a close. I just have my last closing remark, and then I would love to hear whatever else you have
amazing.
To say about the students. So my humble advice is, instead of worrying about a perfect career, a perfect straight career path, think of it as a story that you get to write. And like every job, every experience, every challenge that just adds a new chapter. And and as we all know, like the best stories aren't the predictable ones. Yeah. They are the ones with the twist or with like some crazy challenges and growth and discovery. So go and write your story.
I love that.
Okay.
I think for me, what I have learned is just the amazing quality of education at Utah State. I would say, in my first job in New York City at Macy's, I was working with students who went to Wharton, who had gone to Harvard, who went to Yale, and I felt like my educational experience had been on par to those. And that was such an amazing experience to really have that recognition of the quality of the institution that Utah State is. It's why I still passionately am involved in the university and do everything I can to try to engage with students and help students. I'm on an alumni board in the Huntsman School of Business, but all to say, because I believe so much in what the institution is doing, because I saw firsthand the ability to compete with other people. Now, their networks might be a little bit better, and so we'll continue to get better on that on the alumni side, and opening doors for students, I think, is so important. But what I think more and more when I got out into the career world, even here in Utah, the comparisons and college rivalries, the U and BYU and others, the quality of our students is just absolutely phenomenal. And so I think just trust your gut and remember the value of the education that you're getting and that you can do it. And I think that is so important to remember. And to your point, like that needs to be the story you tell yourself as you approach your career. And don't be worried. The bumps, the hiccups, the twists and turns will come, but really focusing in on your ability and confidence to be successful.
That's great. That's it. That's fantastic. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. It's been lovely to be here with you and spend some time. Thank you.
We hope you loved this episode of the USU Career Stadio podcast. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe and share this episode with your friends and family.